I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV Velocities in Music, two guys with red beards reviewing music for you throughout the year 2013. And this is our 2013 top albums list. 25 best albums, our favorite albums from the year 2013. Tom, this has been a big year in music. A lot of big artists came out with albums. A lot of artists came out with albums this year that were comeback, like MBV. I know Queens of the Stone Age. It's been a while since they released. There was a number of other bands too. David Bowie came out with an album this year.
Yeah, who was expecting that?
Right.
You know?
So a lot of old artists who've been around for a while, who have taken a break or are now coming back, releasing new music. So it's been a very exciting year. Plus, a plethora of really good albums from established artists and new artists alike. So, for our top 25 albums list from 2013, Tom and I, being the fact that we're kind of a duo when it comes to music reviews, it's a little bit more of a challenge for us to pick our favorites, because how do you assess that? Well, I definitely have my list of favorites. Yeah. Vampire Weekend, Modern Vampires of the City is on that list. Tom, how about you?
No, it's not.
Oh, it's not on your list, Tom.
And so because of that, we have situations like that where we have to kind of aggregate our favorites, and some of Jake's favorites, like Vampire Weekend, boohoo, they get a little bit booted off the list because of jerks like me, and then some of my favorites might get booted off the list because Jake doesn't like them quite as much. So
Very true.
We find that middle ground, and we decide on, we actually have a very mathematical system in place. Yeah, that kind of combines everything together, and then we review it and make sure that it looks good to us. So really this list does a very good job of depicting what that gray area of our taste is. Yeah. And our individual lists are a little bit different, but we still both really like everything on this list, so it's a good Velocities in Music kind of overarching view.
And for you guys who have been watching us throughout the year and know how our scoring system works, we're obviously very meticulous, have a very specific scoring system ranging from 20 to 100, 20 being the worst album ever made, Justin Bieber's My World 2.0, and 100 being the best album ever written, which is 9 Inch Nails' The Downward Spiral.
There we go.
So, the scores we've given throughout the year don't necessarily reflect, or you can't necessarily see that reflection in our favorites list, because you have to keep in mind, a lot of these albums that are on our list came out earlier this year, and there's been a long time for us to listen to these albums, some more than others, and really comeback quality plays a huge role in the creation of our favorite albums list. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that because it's a favorites list, our personal genre biases play a little bit bigger of a role in selecting a favorites list. So
they do. So this isn't going to exactly reflect our best worst as far as scoring ranks, but because this is a different ballgame, we're thinking about comeback quality. We're thinking about just, how much do these albums really stick in our minds and make us want to listen to them again. Right.
So without further ado, let's jump in and get started.
All right.
Here is our 25th favorite album of the year. Tom?
And that is 9 Inch Nails' Hesitation Marks. Hesitation Marks is a great start for our list because while it clearly wasn't the best album of 2013, it marked a comeback for Trent Reznor and the 9 Inch Nails crew, and it was quite a triumphant return, really. It kind of harkened back to his classic kind of dance electronic roots, but just had some stellar songwriting on it.
Number 24 on our list. Up next, Kanye West, Yeezus.
For my theme song, my leather black jeans on, my by any means on.
Yeezus was definitely a different album for Kanye West. It really, in my opinion, pushed the limits of what we consider rap music. He used a lot of very aggravating, almost just insular sounds. A lot of synths that just kind of were grating. And it also his most aggressive vocal performance and lyrical performance.
Yeah, very different sound. Production was just very noisy, but it was a cool direction for Kanye.
Absolutely. So up next on our list is number 23, John Murry, The Graceless Age.
I know you don't believe in magic, but nobody does.
The Graceless Age was pretty much an unknown album. I mean, it kind of snuck up on us, and we listened to it a couple times in previewing it and fell in love with it. John Murry is, it's an alt-country album. It has a very alt-country feel, but he has a very progressive way that he writes his music, and he puts so much passion and power into his vocals and lyrics that it actually just sells the album for us as a whole. This was one of our top albums of 2013 for sure.
Going on in number 22, we've got Arctic Monkeys with AM. AM of marked a great return to form for Arctic Monkeys. They went back to the energy and that kind of almost hip-hop witticism in the lyrics that really made them a great and alluring band in their early days. I just found that AM was an album I couldn't get enough of, and I kept coming back.
Completely agree. Up next, number 21, Daughter, If You Leave. If You Leave was another one of those albums that caught us off guard this year. We weren't really expecting, we've never really listened to Daughter before, and then all of a sudden we're previewing this album and we hear these, you know, beautiful indie rock guitars, and the vocalist, she has a wonderful, just really kind of croon over, it just gives this very mystique feel to the album.
Yeah, very, very emotive voice.
Absolutely.
And for number 20, we're going to move on to another female artist, and that is Chelsea Wolfe with Pain is Beauty. Chelsea Wolfe is an artist that just hits close to home for me because I love creepy music.
Yes,
and she makes very dark, kind of mysterious, very creepy sounding music that just I find to be very alluring, and Pain is Beauty had the songwriting, the production, the performance to back it all up. It was just a wonderfully just engaging listening experience.
Absolutely. Up next, for number 19, from the next album from the returning act of Russian Circles, Memorial. Russian Circles are a post-metal band, and Memorial is definitely a post-metal album. However, what makes this album special is that Russian Circles were definitely trying to add a lot more emotion to their sound. And because of that, there's more dynamics on this album. There's a lot more, there's just less moments where they rock out, which is kind of odd for a post-metal band, but at the same time, it gave Memorial such a diversity and an emotional connection with us that it just had to be on our 2013 top albums list.
And at number 18, we've got Ghost Poet with Some Say I, So I Say Light.
That's a mouthful.
I am here, standing by the fire.
Some Say I, So I Say Light is Ghost Poet's second album. When we reviewed his debut a few years ago when it came out, I remember Jake was not that big of a fan of it. I kind of was, but this album is one that we really came together on.
A lot of great songs in this album.
Just great songs. It's got more of kind of like an electronic kind of trip-hop vibe to it. He's a UK artist. But man, just so much diversity, great lyricism, and just a great mood overall from Ghost Poet on that album.
Right. Up next at number 17, Typhoon, White Lighter.
I could have been a little bigger. I could have been a ringer.
White Lighter was actually my third favorite album of the year. I just felt that this album had so much dynamics and diversity in the songwriting that it was just super engaging. There was a number of tracks, at least 3 tracks on here, that were my favorite tracks of the year, or some of my favorite tracks of the year, and just overall a stellar performance and comeback off of their previous record, Hunger and Thirst, which we also like very much.
Yeah. So coming up to number 16, we've got Lorde with Pure Heroine.
You're the only friend I need.
You know, it's kind of appropriate that Lorde would be number 16 on our list because that's how old she was when this album was released.
Wow.
It's kind of funny, but, you know, on first listen, I found that this album wasn't quite my thing. You know, it's pretty poppy, but then once I got to know the songs, man, all 10 of these tracks I just find to be fantastic, and this is an album that had immense comeback quality for me. I could not stop listening to it after we
Several
reviewed it.
key tracks.
Yes.
Up next on our list at number 15 is Deafheaven, Sunbather. Sunbather is one of those just undeniably good metal albums. You know, Deafheaven's sound is a mixture of black metal and shoegaze at times, and you can definitely hear that a lot in the guitar work. The guitar work on Sunbather is absolutely fantastic, but you know, just style and genre alone don't make an album great. What makes an album great is great songwriting, and Sunbather is full of very progressive, nicely written songs. It's very tactful. Deafheaven does a great job of adding a lot of melody, making this a great album listening experience.
And going on to number 14, we've got Run the Jewels, Killer Mike and LP with Run the Jewels.
Not to walk crooked while this anchors drop, but I've been out on them choppy ways and it's hard to say.
Run the Jewels is another pretty short hip-hop release from this year. Yeezus was another one, but really what Run the Jewels did is it showed that Killer Mike and LP were just a match made in heaven.
Kind of like us, Tom.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. Too bad we don't make kick-ass hip-hop music.
Yeah, we don't, but these guys do.
They really do. And that album, I kept coming back to it. Just killer production, great rhymes, great lyricism, just a lot to offer there.
Up next, number 13, Coheed and Cambria at the Afterman Descension. Descension was the second part of the two-album duo that Coheed and Cambria put out. They started off with Ascension at the end of last year in 2012, and then finished at the very beginning of 2013 with Descension. And really, this whole duo albums that they're doing in Coheed and Cambria typical fashion is a story. But really, what made this album good was the fact that it was just kick-ass rock music. I mean, that's what it is. Century the Defiant is one of our collective favorite songs of the year, and the entire album it did a very good job of going back to Coheed and Cambria's roots with a refreshed modern sound as well.
Yep. And at number 12, we've got Indians with Somewhere Else. Somewhere Else is a debut album, and it really just completely encapsulates everything that is indie, lo-fi, singer-songwriter. You know, that format is just embodies, and great songwriting.
Right, very emotive, lots of atmosphere, just all around a great album.
Yeah.
Really caught us by surprise, too.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think, really underappreciated that album.
Number 11 on our list, Tim Hecker's Virgins. In our review of Virgins, Tom, we talked about how Tim Hecker, with this album, it just was clear to us that he is more than just a songwriter. He is an audio artist is really what he does. He creates these soundscapes out of, you know, a lot of just organic sounding instruments. Virgin specifically used an instrument called virginal, which is what the album derives its name from, but it has a lot of piano, more emphasis on piano, a lot of organic kind of distortion and feedback and lots of things. And the way he loops these songs in parts of songs together creates a structure to what is otherwise just ambience, and it really does a cool thing.
Yeah, it's an experience all of its own, and it's very addictive.
Absolutely.
You know, even though there's not pop songwriting, it's not verse, chorus, or anything like that. There's still some instrumental melody, but man, you just don't want to stop listening.
That's right. Up next on our list, number 10, The OC's Floating Coffin. Floating Coffin was one of the most fun albums I got to hear all year long. It was full of just this indie alternative rock guitar-based songwriting. Toe Cutter Thumb Buster. That track has stuck with me all year. It's on my favorite songs of 2013 list. It just the way that these guys just write fun guitar-based music that has a lot of just grit and grind to it. It just makes for a very rewarding listening experience.
Very edgy, very sharp.
Absolutely.
You can't stop but come back to it. And number 9, we've got Kirin J. Callinan with Embracism.
When the train starts coming.
Embracism was an album that I know I liked a little bit more than you, Jake. It snuck up on me. It's an album that kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think many people were talking about it. But man, the sound and Kirin's voice is just... It's just mesmerizing, and it's so creepy. I love creepy music.
You do. You write a lot of creepy music.
I do.
Kirin J. Callinan writes a lot of creepy music, but everything about that album, from even you know the album cover where it's his hand over his face, like he's pulling the skin off of his face, to the just you know awkward, just aggressive nature of his music is just grating at you the entire time. It made for a really addictive listening experience.
It did. I absolutely loved it. And coming up next at number 8, we've got Daft Punk with Random Access Memories.
She's up all night to the sun. I'm up all night to get some. She's up all night for good.
It really should be no surprise that Random Access Memories showed up this high on our list. It's kind of on everyone's list, and deservedly so. I mean, Daft Punk established themselves, you know, like over 15 years ago as just being staples of the electronica and dance community in music. And with Random Access Memories, I think they even topped their own game. I mean, this album is solid, straight through. It's a long album, but it explores so many sounds. And
it plays homage to a lot of their influences, too.
It really does, yeah. And it's absolutely top-notch. Go listen to it if you haven't.
Number 7 on our list, Shannon Wright, In Film Sound.
100 times.
Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but before reviewing In Film Sound, I had never heard of Shannon Wright before.
Neither had I.
And she makes music that really is right up our alley. It's dark. She's not afraid to rock out, use a lot of very different sounding melodies and beats in order to make these just kind of cataclysmic-esque rock. Really, the title, In Film Sound, is perfect because it sounds like a soundtrack to some sort of like noir horror movie, you know?
It really does, yeah. Very, very just grating.
Yes, absolutely.
Next, at number 6, we've got My Bloody Valentine with MBV. MBV came out at the beginning of February, pretty close to the beginning of the year. And, you know, at first everyone was just excited enough to have a new My Bloody Valentine record. I mean, it had been quite a long time, 20 plus years, yeah. And I think for a long time people were just expecting Kevin Shields to never release anything again, even though he said there would be another My Bloody Valentine record. So first there was the initial excitement of just having it. And then the rest of the year was spent just realizing that not only were you left with a new My Bloody Valentine record, you were left with a damn good My Bloody Valentine record.
Very good.
Living up to the name that the band has established over the last 2 or 3 decades. And, I mean, this album is just fantastic.
And you got to see it live.
I did, and it was a great show. It was the loudest thing I have ever experienced.
Really?
Hands down. Oh, yeah, it was insane.
That's awesome. Up next, number 5 on our list, one I'm very excited for, one of my favorite bands of Montreal, their newest record, Lousy with Sylvianbriar.
There's a virus in your tenants, don't be naive.
Every of Montreal fan who was a fan of Montreal's work way back in the day, like in the Gay Parade and Sleep in the Poppies and, you know, Satanic Panic in the Attic, rejoiced when Lousy with Sylvianbriar came out, because what has plagued of Montreal in the last few records that they've put out is just this addiction to too many synthesizers. It almost takes over their songwriting a bit, and while Kevin Barnes is still a genius when it comes to writing songs, I gotta say I've always preferred his older work where he had a little bit more of an organic taste to the sound. And Lousy with Sylvianbriar is some of the group's most forward-thinking indie rock music. It has a lo-fi production style to it. It is just a great album. It's written so well. Kevin Barnes plays all of his cards on this one, and I honestly think that Lousy with Sylvianbriar is one of the best in of Montreal's extensive back catalog.
And number 4, we've got Neko Case with The Harder I Fight. Is that right?
Nope.
No. The worse things get, the harder I fight, the more I love you.
I bet she doesn't even get it right.
She better not.
That's what you raised me to be.
Neko Case's latest takes her kind of definitive alt-country Americana sound, but adds a lot more angst to it.
Yes.
There is a little bit more electric guitar in there, and just a more biting attitude in the lyrics and the presentation in general. And man, did I love it. You just get Neko Case's attitude and the great songwriting to back it up.
Yeah, a lot more aggressive in the songwriting approach, too. She took a lot more risks on this album, and it paid off because there's a lot of very good songs that stuck with me throughout the entire year.
Absolutely.
I've come back to that album a number of times.
Yeah, me too.
Number 3 on our list, the final 3, Cult of Luna, Vertical. Vertical kind of took us by surprise at the beginning of the year. It was one of the first records that we reviewed this year from 2013, and it instantly, I mean, we loved it. We gave this record, I think, a 92 overall. Obviously deserving of the number 3 spot on our 2013 albums list. Cult of Luna being a aggressive kind of alt-metal band. You know, they write a lot of very diverse sounding metal music, and Vertical was just the epitome of that. They are all over the place on this album. Lots of great dynamics, very aggressive songwriting, lots of very long songs too. But what really got me was how they chose to end the album, which you know, was you know, the real vocals sung very creepy, just kind of morose way to end it. Put a very, you know, stark ending to the album.
What sealed the deal for me with Vertical was just that it was a metal album with no low points.
Right.
It's a long album, but not too many tracks, but every single one of those long tracks was a highlight in itself.
Absolutely.
And it just made for a great great listening experience.
Absolutely.
So we're coming to our second favorite album of the year, and that is The Strokes with Comedown Machine. Comedown Machine was an album that Jake and I both actually really didn't like much on first listen. By the time we reviewed it, I think we were in like the mid-80s with it, and then it just kept going up from there.
I never stopped listening to it.
No, neither have I. And I found that even the songs that I thought were weaker in the beginning...
Like Welcome to Japan?
Yeah, I ended up loving. You hated that song.
I hated that
ended
song.
up being one of your favorites of the year.
Probably like my third favorite song of the year. Just an overall a great Strokes album. While it wasn't, you know, it's nothing is gonna ever be Is This It. Comedown Machine is just full of really well-written songs, and it's the Strokes doing what they do best, which is just writing good indie rock music.
Yep. Taking their best songwriting and putting it with that kind of new sound and approach and production style that they've done with Angles.
New #1 album for 2013, Queens of the Stone Age, Like Clockwork.
I've got nothing to lose and only one way up.
This is the first year in the 4 years Tom and I have been doing Velocities in Music that we've agreed beforehand on what should be the best album. Like Clockwork is the definitive album from 2013. Josh Homme returns with Queens of the Stone Age. He has went through some sort of funk in his life, I think, and then wrote this just passionate, just crazy good album full of just badass rock and roll songs. And it's just one of those albums that, I mean, when you're listening to it, you're taken to another place. The entire listening experience just blows me away, and I kept coming back to this, you know, all year long after the album.
Oh, absolutely. And what a triumph for Josh, because he already, with Queens of the Stone Age and even Caius before then, has accomplished so much in his career. He didn't need to put out another terrific Queens of the Stone Age album. He's already got several. Really, all of them are great. And then he put out the one that, in my mind, just tops them all. Even Songs for the Deaf and even Rated R, as much as I love those albums, Like Clockwork is just solid. It is a masterpiece of rock, and it just does not hold back. I'm so glad that this ended up being our #1.
Me too.
Like, there couldn't have been a better, you know, candidate for this spot.
Right. And that wraps up our 2013 Top 25 Albums list for this year. What did you guys think was the best album of the year? Please reach out to us. Let us know. You guys are what keeps VIMTV going. And by the way, we recently crossed 5,000 YouTube subscribers. After 4 years, you know, 5,000 is pretty darn good. And we wouldn't be here today still doing this if it wasn't for your guys' constant interaction and support. Thank you for being part of the Velocities in Music community. And please continue to watch as we go forward into 2015. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.